Hello, welcome to another episode of What Are You Selling with me, David Green. And with me today, I have the pleasure of speaking to Keeper 829, his debut novel, Michael Camarillo. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
And congratulations on publishing your first book. That must be something that was very thrilling. And I remember when I published my first book, I don't think I gave myself quite enough credit for actually doing it. So I hope you celebrated.
Yeah, thank you. I'm very excited about it. Luckily, I have a wife behind me who's been pushing that celebration aspect. So.
Yes, yeah, we need that. I think because it's one of the things that it's funny. Like I mean, a lot of the time when you do kind of interviews, especially kind of written ones, you get people asking like, "How do you celebrate when you finish a book?" And I'm usually like, "I just start the next one." Right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah. But it's nice to have someone saying like, you should really like, let's go out and let's get a takeaway or get some drinks or whatever. It's nice to have that. So it's a great way to start a new year by publishing a book.
Yeah, definitely.
And Keeper 829 is sci-fi, apocalyptic, dystopian kind of book. So we're going to start talking about that in a little while. But first of all, I want to know is, did you always have this ambition to become a published writer?
No, I think I've been asked this a number of times, and I really can't put a finger on when I actually decided. I know I've always loved writing, and it's always just come natural to me. And I did a bunch of creative writing when I was young, but I think kind of along the lines of every other childhood dream, at some point, I probably thought, hey, I want to be a famous author, but it really never stuck with me. It just kind of, happened.
Yes. And you've always been a big reader. Is that correct, or is that against some?
Yes.
Yes, you have. Yeah. So what kind of things did you grow up reading? What are your kind of inspirations?
So I really read a lot of literary fiction, so a lot of the classics. I'm a huge history buff, so I love historical fiction.
Right.
My favorite author is Anne Rice, and I didn't actually find her until I met my wife, and I've just breezed through all her books. But she has a historical fiction flair that I just can't get enough of. But yeah, throughout my childhood, I mean, I read a whole bunch. I read everything. I mean, I didn't stay genre specific. I read sci-fi. I read my funny thing was, so I loved reading. I was very, very good in school, but my one act of rebellion was I never read a book that I was assigned when I had to do it. So I would do cliff notes, spark notes, like just make the test as hard as possible on myself. And ultimately I'd go back and read the book and was like, why didn't I just read this? But that was my one act of rebellion when I was young. So
Well, they're not as fun to read when someone tells you you have to read it. Like, so there's books that I read at school where I would be like, you know what, if I actually just went and read that in my own time, I would have enjoyed it. But because it was like, you have to, I was like, well, no, don't tell me what I have to do, teacher. I will read my own thing. That's
yeah.
brilliant, isn't it? It's like one of my favorite books of all time is Hyperion by Dan Simmons. I think and the rest of the series is really good as well. But Hyperion is fantastic. But like the structure of it is based on the Canterbury Tales, and
Mhm.
I hated the Canterbury Tales at school because we had to study it and we had to do it and all this kind of stuff. And I was always like, oh, it wasn't finished, and it's just this. But then one of my favorite books is basically a sci-fi version of it. So.
Oh, wow, that's awesome.
Um, so obviously, Keeper 829, it's sci-fi, it's dystopian, it's post-apocalyptic. Is that something that's something that you're into anyway, or was it this you just had this idea that was like this will fit this theme that I want to go for?
So yeah, I think I'm kind of into it. I'm really into metaphysical, philosophical discussions. That's something that drew my wife and I together. Some of those really deep, purpose-oriented conversations. And I find that that's kind of a theme that's overarching in a lot of dystopian and sci-fi novels. It's really trying to find that reason to live, and people trying to assert power. And I have a military background, and I'm doing my master's in international relations right now. So, I mean, I have a lot of things that really kind of drive me toward trying to create a different world order and going through those, struggles, those existential struggles that come along with it. So in terms of the science aspect itself, I've always loved science, but the story itself just came about. I wanted to write historical fiction initially, and this story just happened. So
Okay, so tell me about that. So how did and you can say it came in a dream, because I know I've interviewed a lot of authors, and you'd be surprised at the amount of them would say that I went to sleep, woke up the next morning, and I had this idea for a story just there as soon as I woke up in the morning. So if that happens to you, then that's cool as well. But tell me about that. So tell me where this, I get the themes and your background all works into it, but this actual, instead of it being historical fiction and it being post-apocalyptic and sci-fi, where did that come from?
yeah, so I think all of it came from reading. Actually, for me, I was working in I was in the military at the time, but I was doing like kind of just a side thing of working in a library and just reorganizing books,
Right.
just for fun. And as I was doing that, I had a lot of time on my hands to read. So I was just reading a whole bunch of books, and I was going through a major transformative moment in my life at the time. And I was having, I've always had existential issues, kind of just not issues, but just existential struggles, I guess, trying to find, purpose and meaning, and where I fall on the religious spectrum. So I was reading a lot of books about that, and that really got my brain kind of flowing. And I just started seeing these characters in my head, and started, not the characters per se, but I started seeing these themes and this world kind of start developing. Like, what if this world existed, and where are all the things that, geopolitical concerns, social concerns that I was privy to at the time, and very, opinionated, what would happen if these continued down the path that we're going. So it was all just kind of a amalgamation of all the things that were going on in my life at the time. Not in a dream, but but yeah, it just kind of came to me. In terms of the keeper, like the personality of the characters and all that, they're highly influenced off of people that I have known, and there's direct references to people's outfits and their demeanor and their actions and things they say to people that I've known. So yeah, I don't know if that answers the question, but
Oh, definitely, yeah, definitely does. So, how long were you writing this book for? So, and maybe from the genesis of the idea to when you were like, this is it, it's finished, it's edited, it's going to be out on December 31st. How long was that time period?
so pen to paper was July of 2019, and I uploaded it to Amazon on December 23rd, I believe, of 2021. So that's about 3 years, right? Two and a half years,
Yeah.
right? 19. My math is wrong. Yeah. So I think, was it 2019 or maybe it was 2018? No, it was 2019. Yeah. So 2.5 years worth of writing for this was the whole process. I'm very much, I didn't know anything about, the world of writing when I first started, plotter, pantser, all that stuff. Like, I've been learning about it, listening to podcasts. I think I'm a pantser. I mean, I started writing as soon as the idea came to, and I wrote the first 10 chapters by hand on grid paper. Yeah, so a lot of scratching out, a lot of, ink on the fingers and stuff.
Yeah, well, it's whatever works, really, isn't it? So, yeah, so you say you're a pantser. How much did this change between drafts then? Was there a huge change? Did you keep on going back and reiterating it, or was it, pretty much how you thought it was going to go?
It was very similar. There are some major character changes in my main character, Nesha, due to some feedback from my beta readers wanting her to be a little more assertive. And then my editor helped me take down on some of the exposition. I'm a very, I guess, expositional writer with that historical fiction background. There's a lot of components in this book that my main character has flashbacks, and that's where I incorporate my love of history. So she has flashbacks of ways she's impacted human society throughout their existence. So I got that little history part in there. But it became very, my editor said there was a lot more internalization than a standard science fiction should have. So that got cut quite a bit. I know my initial draft was, I think, 94,000 words. and now it's at 71. So it cut quite a bit, and then I did add additional chapters. So I think I have a file document that says cut content, and it's about 23,000 words. So
Prequels and spin-offs, that's what that'll be all for, bonus material. Never let it go to waste. So tell us a little bit about the book. So what is the premise of Keeper 829?
So yeah, it's based in 2098. The idea behind it is that a dystopian society arose out of what they call the war, and it's taking off the kind of themes of, you know, how the World War I was the Great War, World War II was the war to end all wars, you know. So every war is supposed to be the last war.
Yeah.
But this war was a war that destroyed states, the concept of, you know, countries and nations. And then out of the ashes rose this organization called the Institution that broke up the world into 4 different zones, geographic zones. It's very oppressive. Everything is, you know, managed and controlled, kind of 1984-esque. But behind it, so there's the human dynamic in that. So you're dealing with the human dynamic, but underlying the whole thing, what makes it more complex and interesting, in my opinion, and dynamic, is that the keeper concept. So keepers are biomimetic beings that have been on Earth for thousands of years. They're extraterrestrials from a different society that have been a different civilization far, far away, that went into civil strife, civil war, and they've been combating against themselves for all eternity that we know, for well past our existence as human beings. So there's a whole nother dynamic of struggle there. And this is happening in the shadows underneath human existence. And these keepers and then their counterparts, warders, are fighting each other in the shadows. And they're taking over, they're impacting human existence as we go throughout, you know, history. And I show that throughout the book. But the big thing is the war is analogous to, or not analogous, synonymous to the conflict between this other civilization. So it's a very complex dynamic going on. But the ultimate thing is that, sorry, I go off and then I lose myself. But the ultimate idea is that humans are a crop for reaping. So this civilization has been creating what they call yields all across these multiple systems throughout space, throughout the universe. And they're using them to essentially alter their genome to make them immortal and make them invulnerable to existential threats. So humans don't know that they're just part of this huge genetic engineering game. And the keepers are integral to this vision. So
Excellent. Sounds perfect. Sounds very interesting. I like the whole mix of, you know, history repeating as well, which I think is always a really nice thing to lead with. So this is going to be a part of a multi-book series as well. Have you started on book 2 yet, or is that, you know?
yes,
Yeah.
I just passed 20,000 words yesterday. So I'm about a third of the way done with this book, with book 2.
And how are you finding that compared to writing the first book? Because obviously, you know, the first book can sometimes take a little bit longer because you're kind of figuring things out, but you also have the innocence of, it's my first book and, you know, this is just the way it's going to be. And when you come back to do the second one, you have to be like, what did I write about this in the first one, and make sure that everything really lines up perfectly. So how are you finding the process?
That is the struggle. I am having to have both of them open at once, and I go Control F because I'm like, what did I say this guy's last name was? Like, you know, like struggling with little things like that. Because that's, I guess, the struggle with being kind of more of a pantser, that I didn't really line out my plot and my characters. And I know my editor first asked me for a character profile, and I was like, oh, what is a character profile? I have no idea what that is. And then she was like, storyboards, and I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, I have no idea what any of this stuff is.
Yeah.
But yeah, so this process, it's going a lot faster. I'm writing a lot quicker. The ideas are flowing a lot better. But doing that hindsight, that backwards, you know, making sure everything lines up is kind of a struggle, and it's slowing me down a little bit. I am changing. One of the initial things I struggled with was the first one is all written in past tense. Okay, so that's typical for writing, right? I wrote, you know, as these events had happened. So I did the whole loop thing where at the beginning of Keeper 829, Nasha is talking to you in her present this is where she was after all these events happened. Now I'm telling you my story. So the story goes back, and then at the end, she's back in, square one.
Yeah.
Book 2 is all present tense. So it's literally happening as you're going, i.e., Hunger Games is written all present tense. It's happening as the reader goes through it. So that was a struggle, kind of learning how to write in present tense at first. I felt like it was very weird, unorthodox, and I sent it to my editor for the first 2 chapters. It was like, it doesn't feel right. It feels really weird. Like it doesn't. And she's like, no, you're actually writing a lot better. Your first chapter in book 2 is so much better than the first chapter in book 1. So I ended up having to cut chapter 1 of my first book. She was like, no, you're doing great. So I've kept with it. I've gotten into the flow of it. And the other big structural change is, I told you the exposition side in Keeper 829 was pretty long. So a lot of my chapters are a little longer. I'm keeping all my chapters very short in book 2. So I'm trying to keep it action oriented, moving quickly. So it's a little different than book 2, book 1.
Oh, excellent. Well, congratulations on the release as well, and the best of luck with book 2. And when that one comes out, you'll have to come back on again and tell us about it, and we can talk about your success of Keeper 829 as well. Michael, you're a great guest. Thank you so much for coming on. And where's the best place for people to find you if they want to come out and check out your work?
So I'm on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all at Michael Camarillo Books. I have a website, michaelcamarillobooks.com, where I sell my books as well as merchandise, and I offer a bunch of professional services, including web building, proofreading, beta reading, all that. My book is available on Amazon in 3 versions: paperback, hardback, and Kindle. And I'm working with trying to find a narrator to make it available on audiobook soon.
Excellent. And everyone that's listening on Spotify or Apple Music or are watching on YouTube, all of those links will be below in the show notes. So do check those out and check out Michael's work and the services that he offers too. Michael, thanks so much for coming on. And again, very best of luck for the rest of the year.
Thank you so much for having me.
No worries. And everyone who's watching or listening at home, thank you for staying with us till the end. Until next time, goodbye.